All right. So we were talking about financial tips towards the end of the year and the different things that, I think what happens is, at least in my expectation, is that people get all wrapped up in it's the end of the year. I got to spend money, whether they've been saving money for this occasion, or they're just going to, put it on plastic and have a bunch of debt and all kinds of stuff. This really is your time to shine. I don't know if you have it in tip number 1, tip number 2, tip number 3, or how you have it framed. But I'm genuinely curious to see what it is that you have to say and kind of, to be blunt with you, how you're going to frame it,
Yeah. So there's a good handful, maybe, 7, 10 different tips that we can kind of go through, just see where it takes us and, how the conversations go. But these are some of the best practices headed into the end of the year, just to make sure that, everybody's taking advantage of, what's available to them. Make sure that they're not missing out on opportunities, to invest and maybe, take advantage of the tax preferred treatment that some of these investment, vehicles have.
Okay. All right. Well, what's the first one that you want to share? What would be the first? What's the top? What's the one thing that jumps out as number one for you?
The number one is, I would say, just making sure that, if you have some extra cash, which is always difficult kind of going into the end of the year, Christmas and the holiday seasons, buying gifts for everybody. But if you do have extra money, you still have that, check or two that you can maybe potentially try to max out your 401k or whatever investment vehicle you have, 403b or whatever that is, just to make sure that you get all that, the most money you could get in there, because, you can't go back and put additional money in January saying, hey, I'm going to max my 401k out. So the contribution limits, if you're under 50 is going to be $23,500. If you're older than 50, they do have a catch up, which is going to be another additional $7,500 that you can put on top of that. And then just recently, within the last couple of years, they have something called a super catch up. So if you're in ages between, this is pretty cool, ages between 60 and 63, you can add another $11,250 on top of your normal contribution. So that could be substantial.
You know what? That's I'll tell you. I think I read or heard someone say when you get to about mid 40s, now you're starting to hit that stride of your high incoming earning years. I think it kind of it catapults into your 50s, right? So the idea then that, okay, here's a super catch up where you're able to add additional money. I'll be interested to hear you say if that's applicable to the IRAs as well. But here it is. I'm getting older, and I likely don't have I don't have kids in the home anymore. I've got some form of discretionary spending, if possible, right? I've been paying on my house for so long and all this sort of stuff. So the idea then that I could just sock a lot of money away when I'm older and have a lot more of it to kind of devote towards, a retirement plan is very interesting to me. And I did not know about the super catch up. So you're the first one. So I learned, I'm the podcast host, but I learned something from my man Ty here. So what is there a super catch up? I know there's a catch up for IRA, but is there a super catch up for an IRA?
There's not. There is the additional catch up, right? So the normal contribution to the IRA is $7,000 this year, with a $1,000 catch up right now.
Catch up for the 50
Now,
and older, right?
yeah. Now the timetable is a little bit different, right? So I was saying, hey, end of the year, you have to get that money in. If it's a 401k, 403b, 54/7, whatever that might be. However, with the IRA, you actually have the tax deadline. So, if it goes in you can maybe even kind of start to figure out what your taxes look like, January, February type deal, and still contribute to 2025.
Right. So it's April 15th.
Correct. Yep.
For those who are, so in other words, to build upon what you were saying is that if you have some extra discretionary spending and it comes towards after the first of the year, you're able to add towards last year's IRA balance until April 15th, which is the tax deadline, because that's when, obviously Uncle Sam wants his pound of flesh. And
Absolutely.
you know what I mean?
And one of the strategies that I use with a lot of people that are in the unions, where maybe they have, a spouse that's a stay-at-home spouse, or works but doesn't really have a retirement, plan with who they work with, is that they can also do a spousal IRA, so they can make
Mhm.
that contribution to the spouse. In addition to what they're putting away, like the annuities or whatever else that they're doing.
So let me ask you this. Do you find that, um, what is your experience with individuals that have negotiated retirement funds? And then, you know, do they usually defer to that instead of, like, let's say, devoting any real significant time to IRA? Or, what's your experience in that regard?
Um, if we're talking about like where there's a match by a company, we always recommend, hey, at least contribute to what you're going to get on the match. Now, outside of that's very different, because every plan's going to have their handful of options. A lot of times there's, every target fund out there that they have access to, based on their age. And then, maybe only a handful of other different mutual funds, ETFs, and then maybe some kind of fixed account. Where if you go to an IRA, you have a lot more options. I don't want to say anything under the sun, but a lot more options where you can kind of pick and choose. And when we're advising, we'll look for best in class for certain, ETFs, mutual funds, or even pick individual stocks where you usually don't have that ability with inside of a 401k plan, or even our annuities.
Right. So if I understood you correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is not for necessarily those who, let's say, have contractually bargained retirement accounts. But if you have a 401k, for example,
Yep.
the advice is to at least give up until the match, and then max out your IRA, just because it has a lot more options. And then I've seen that recommendation before. So what is yours?
I think it depends on the individual. If we're talking about somebody that's maybe just starting, like maybe they just want to keep it simple, keep everything together, it gives you a nice clear picture. And I'd say, hey, listen, if you only have an extra like 3 to 5, maybe $7,000, that's just getting started. you know if this is going to be your plan, that you're going to be able to do this year after year after year and can put into an IRA,
Mhm.
then, or if you have like an extra 25, 50, $100,000 that's invested, where we can work on a strategy, then it might make sense to do that, IRA. Now, just for being simple, sometimes people just like to keep everything where they can see it. If not, there's nothing wrong with making a little extra contribution to your 401k or your employer plan. I don't see a problem with that at all. But I think that as you grow and as you start to really accumulate assets, that's when I think it's more important that you start to have that individual IRA account, or investment account, where we can really dig into what your goals are, who you are as an investor, so we can customize those strategies for you. So it's a lot easier to do that, and incorporate to the financial planning. And you're able to move with the market a little bit more. So even right now, there's a lot going on, especially when it's coming to AI and all that talk. Is it a bubble? Is it just a little air leak? I'm hearing, or or does a lot of people just have it wrong, and it's going to shoot to the moon? But you know, when you start to have certain investments that might just be limited and locked into maybe this large cap, well, you don't have a lot of flexibility to kind of move from there. Is it large cap growth? Is it value? Like, what I mean? Sometimes we don't have all those options inside of these plans that allow you to be a little bit more, you know, mobile, and flexible, and be able to move with what's going on in the market.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So tip number one, if you got some extra money, right? I mean, I know
Yep.
it's towards the end of the year and it's Christmas time, but you got some extra money, 401k contribution, or, right, for those of you who may not have a 401k, you might be contractually under a collective bargaining agreement, and you've got an annuity fund and you've got a pension. Well, then your recourse is obviously going to be an IRA, but it's looking towards those balances for tax preferential treatment if that's the case, right? Some of us may happen to have a Roth IRA, which we can discuss at a later date for sure to go into more in depth. But
Yeah.
okay, all right. So excellent.
And
What's
then
what's
one
number?
more note on that too, though,
Okay.
is not necessarily even if you're in that situation, do you have to put it necessarily in IRA? It could just be an investment account, right? That gives you more
Mm.
flexibility. It can be, in addition to your emergency fund that you have. So you can let that money grow. And then as time goes on, then you can start to take some of it and put it into that IRA, but you still have access to it without any penalties.
Nice, nice. Yeah, that's nice. Okay. What is tip number 2?
Tip number two is just to make sure that if you're of that age, which is 73, making sure that you take out your RMDs. So there's huge penalties if you don't take that. Unfortunately, I just ran into somebody, not a client of mine. So they came to me and said, like, what's going on with this? Like, I didn't even know. I'm like, that's kind of crazy because for all our clients, and I don't know where they're coming from, or I would rather not say, but it's we get all kind of bells and whistles. Hey, you know, they need to take this amount out. How come they're not taking this out? Like, what's going
Mm-hmm.
on? And I think it's important to mention though is that the IRS requires you to take out a certain percentage based on your age, and it's all the mortality, which we got calculators that do that for us. But it doesn't have to be. Let's just say if you have 3 accounts, it doesn't have to be the same percentage out of all 3. Whatever the percentage is, it just has to be overall out of them. So you can take the whole dollar amount out of just one account and leave the other 2, or take, same amount out of all 3, or just take out of 2, whatever it is. Doesn't matter what the combination is the percentage out of the whole group of IRAs. That percentage has to be taken out.
So, for those who may not be aware, define RMDs.
Yep. It's required minimum distribution. So just recently they bumped up the age from 72 to 73. So, and I know that they're going to bump it up to 75 here
Oh,
in a
wow.
few more years. Yeah. So, and, with myself is like, last good handful of years, I've always been, my money has been into the Roth because I'm like, okay, where our tax is going to be later on, all this other stuff. But now I'm starting to think about it like, okay, well, if they keep pushing back that RMD age, does it make sense? It might be better off taking, the tax treatment, early on, because what if they push it back to 80, 85? Like, what I mean? It's like, well, geez, like, I don't know if I'm going to live that long, like, right? So why not take advantage of the preferred tax treatment with a traditional versus the Roth? So, yeah, I'm still going to do the Roth myself personally, but it doesn't mean it's right for everyone. But the farther they push that back, the more it makes me think is, oh, maybe I'll start to contribute to the traditional over the Roth.
It's intriguing to me because I didn't think that, number one, I didn't know that they were going to continually push that age. But I've got a Roth IRA too, but we don't contribute nowhere near as much, nowhere near the limit. I mainly have it from ease of simplicity because I've already got, you know, tax deferred, from the annuity fund. So I wanted, something to, I don't want to say hedge my bets, but I wanted to diversify. So, but I understand that line of thinking that you've brought up too, because it makes sense, right? If I don't live to be 80, then, I've basically lived off money for tax. I've just kicked the taxes down, through the time. And that's an interesting perspective. I didn't know that they were moving it to 75. So interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I think 2030 is when that's going to bump up.
Interesting. What do you think is the reason for that?
I mean, I think the big reason for it is that people are living longer. We got advances in medication, so they do have to make this money last longer.
Mm.
At one time, there's you can only contribute to a certain age, and now you can contribute as long as you're working. So that Secure Act 2.0, a lot of things changed, in my mind for the better. But I think that the government realizes that if we take these people, make these people take out all that money early in their life, and they're living to 90, 95, what are we going to do when they have no more retirement money? right? So they're worried about the burden in the future when life expectancies are increasing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to distract from the actual podcast episode at hand, but I'll be curious to know, the thoughts. At some point in time, we ought to like seriously discuss, I'm genuinely concerned or curious and concerned about Gen Z,
Yeah, yeah.
and their lack of access to totality. So I'll be curious but that's another podcast for another time. So, all right, that's tip number 2. What is tip number 3?
The other thing too is this, we call it tax loss harvesting. And what that means is that if you have, it wouldn't be necessarily a retirement account or any account that has that tax preferred treatment, deferred treatment type stuff, but individual accounts that you may have. So the way that it works is that when you have an individual account, whenever you receive a dividend or whenever you sell a stock position, ETF, mutual fund position, whenever you sell a position, if you realize a gain, you have to pay taxes on that. So one of the strategies that we'll implement is this tax loss harvesting strategy. And to kind of give you an example is, let's just say you made, I don't know, well, let's make it easy here, $100, for the year. But we thought beverages were going to be good, but right now they took a big dip. And let's just say we had Coke, and Coke, I'm just making up prices here, went from $10 to $8, but we still think that beverage space is going to do well. What we do is go and buy, like, say, Pepsi. So what we're doing is we still have the position of beverages that we think is going to be profitable in the future, but for whatever reason, it kind of took a dip. Maybe we're just being diversified or whatever that is. But right now we have that $2 loss. Now for that position, we have a $2 loss. We sold that out. We realized the $2 loss. And then we'll take that from that $100 and we'll subtract that $2 loss. And now you'll only pay the taxes on the $98, so to speak. So that's a strategy we can implement, especially, for people that have a good chunk of change in there that are investing and, or trying to reduce their taxes.
Interesting. Yeah, because taxes kind of get complicated.
Oh, they sure do. And that strategies kind of can be complex at some times, but I was just trying to keep it as simple as possible, just to give people a general idea of what that might look like. But yeah, I mean, when we had COVID, some people were ticked off because their whole portfolio might be down, 10, 15, 20% of that time. And yet they still had to pay taxes because the losses weren't realized. They still had the positions, right?
Right.
And then, but they still received dividends. They still, positions that sold out. And, people were like, what do you mean? I'm down, 15%. Like, why do I owe taxes? Well, what I mean? Is because you didn't have an advisor that, that utilized that strategy. So, it is important, to be aware of, especially if, your household is making good money, you're going to be in a higher income tax bracket, and you definitely want to reduce the amount of taxes that you pay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually a good strategy. Yeah. I like that. So if you need an advisor, you know who to talk to.
Yeah, give me a call.
Ty.
Yeah, thank you for the plug, brother.
That's right, man. Anytime. So, I highly doubt that there's anybody out there doing what we're doing, right? So I don't, offering what we give, and it is what it is. So, what's the next tip?
If you have one of those favorite charities or something dear to your heart, and you're looking to get that tax write-off too, that's a good time to do it. So it would account for tax year 2025. So if you have whatever that might be, consider doing that. And it could be your church, it could be some kind of some people have people that were dear to them that lost people to cancer, and there's so many good organizations out there.
Mm-hmm.
One of the organizations that I do a lot of work with is a local organization called the Trade Winds. So they work a lot with people that have special needs and try to give them like jobs. So that it's really cool. So a lot of my marketing stuff I'll do through them because it turns out fantastic. They do a good job of making brochures, my business card, actually my tent that I use for promotion, for all my golf outings, they did that, but they're teaching these individuals job skills, right? And
Mm.
And I think it's so important, no matter who you are, but is to have a purpose. So having a purpose is so important, having goals. So it allows these people to say, hey, listen, I have a goal. I'm going to make this, and it's
Mm.
just like construction, right? So when I did construction, I don't know how many guys that, I'd be in a car with, oh, I built that building. I built that
Oh
building,
yeah,
right?
that's
So,
right.
and you can see it, right? And it's like, okay, yeah, yeah. A few that I was out there building, like, yeah, man, I did that. Like, I watched it go up, and it's the coolest thing in the world, right? So, giving these individuals an opportunity to do something, and it is great. And at their golf outing, like I always try to have a little fun with what we're doing. So, I created like a bags tournament. So the longest bags, we didn't have time to play games, but at my golf hole, we'd sit there and just kind of network, whatever. But we'd have like one bag, and it'd be the longest bag. I give everybody two throws, and one of the individuals that worked at the trade win won. So I gave him it's like $100 gift card, I think it was, and whatever it was, and it was cool, man. It made his day, dude. He was so dude. I mean, watching somebody get that pumped, dude, it's heartwarming. So it was good
Yeah.
stuff, man. So, but yeah, the main thing is if you have a charity that kind of hits home like that, that now's a great time to reach out to them and maybe give them a little donation.
Yeah, especially this time of year, right? I would probably equate it to like that person, the enthusiasm they get. Sometimes we take it for granted. We're like, hey man, I appreciate that. Yeah, that's what's up. And they go bananas over it, right? And you're
Yes.
like, that's a great reaction right there. That's a good reaction. You know what I mean? Like you're like, yeah, that's what's up, man. I like that.
Dude, I mean, it couldn't have worked out any better that one of the individuals that worked there won it, like, right? Because a lot of our tradespeople, like our local unions, they support that organization. So you have a lot of,
Yeah.
individual, guys that are in trades, but you have business agents and managers and all that good stuff. And to see this guy, like, dude, it made everybody smile that this guy won, So it's perfect.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, man. That's and we do that as well. And so what he's so when tax time comes, I don't know how Indiana does it, but I know so I'm in Virginia, and they automatically give you a $12,000 deduction per person. So it's automatically $24,000 for between my wife and I,
Yep, yep.
and we can't itemize unless itemizations get above 24,000. Now for us, they do, but most people they don't. Still, it's a tax preferential treatment, right? And quite frankly, when you get to see a reaction like what you're talking about, or that hey, I'm helping. Whether it's because we have um, right, I would say about 10 minutes up the road is a children's hospital at King's Daughters. That's all it is a children's hospital, and like that's not something my oldest, we went numerous trips there, and that's not a place that you ever want to have to go, right?
Yeah.
So from a financial support, or I see them all the time on TV, right? St. Jude's or
Yep.
anything like that, right? So not only do you get the obvious benefit from taxes, but you get to realize real quick the humanity in somebody else, the need, and the quite frankly the sickness that we're all sometimes we're not accustomed to because we don't see it face to face every day. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's tough, man.
Yep.
Especially this time of year too.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So, but yeah, so like, again, on an upbeat, just bringing smiles to people. That's the holiday spirit, right? So,
Yeah,
yeah, if you can donate to an organization that's dear to your heart,
yeah,
it's a good time to do it.
it's a Christmas gift, right? So like, and I don't know how, here's another tip, at least from me anyway, is that one of the things that we do as a family is I'm like, all right, look, what is something, I talk to each one of my kids and I'm like, what is something that you're interested in? Like you're a ministry that you're interested in supporting, if you will, something that's a little near and dear to you to help, obviously from a finance perspective, but it's also to get your buy-in as well. Like it's a gift, you know what I mean? And it seems small and insignificant, but you never really know, number one, what impact you're going to make, whether you do make someone's day or not. And then secondly, it's like, okay, well, and ultimately, when we really get down to it, it's like, how do I also get not just buy-in from my kids, but that same, I'll say, giving spirit, that same willingness, if you will, to capitalize on some of those tips that we're conversing about. So it's just one of the things that we do.
I think that's amazing. So you're teaching your kids to be grateful for what they have, right? And they're fortunate enough to help others, and I mean, it's so rewarding, and I mean, it's hard to describe how rewarding that can be when you can put a smile on somebody's face or help somebody in a dear situation like that. So I think that's unbelievable that you're teaching them that, and that they're jumping on board. And the kind of like when my boys were younger, they're older now, so they're 14 and 16, but uh, they were a little spoiled, because they were the first grandkids on both sides of the family, and
Yeah.
and they got every toy in the world that was there. And I mean, to the point where it's like, initially I thought I was going to spoil them. No, man, they got, it's like I didn't want to buy anything because I'm like, they're going to have doubles. Like this is like, this is
Yeah.
stupid. And like, you're one child, man. Like, how many toys can you play with? And like growing
Mm-hmm.
up, like, you know, I don't want to say like we were poor, but like, what I mean? We didn't have a ton either, so like, hey, we
Yeah.
had a football or basketball or, baseball. And like, that's what we did. So, whatever a basketball cost, that was like what we were working with. Right.
Yeah.
So to have all these additional toys, like they were pretty blessed, but it got to the point. It's like, guys, like, we need to do something. We have a ton of toys all over the place. Like,
Yeah.
do you think we should, help other kids that don't have any toys? And and I'm like, hey, let's just put this stuff in the box. The way that they're grabbing that and putting stuff in, I thought was amazing, because I thought, like,
Yeah.
being kids, sometimes it's hard to comprehend like what you're actually doing for someone. They don't see the
Uh-huh.
other individual. They don't know where it's going. The toys is disappearing. They don't like, oh, it's going. They don't know if it's, you're telling them it's going to somebody else, but they don't really know. It's just going in a
Yeah.
box and disappearing. But to
Yeah.
see, like, it made me proud, honestly, to see them to grab so many toys and say, no, I want somebody to be able to play with this too. So, it made me feel good as a dad.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it really tapping into the biblical concept of it's more blessed to give than receive.
Yep.
And that's 100% true, at least in my experience, for sure. And then, I obviously want to teach that with my kids, because you think about it like this from a parent, right? I get a gift from my kids or a gift from other people. I'm like, yeah, it's great. But I get more joy out of giving to my kids or giving to my wife or provide, quite frankly, we don't even have to talk about actual physical, tangible gifts. Could just be very well that I'm providing for them and providing the environment that they're in. And it's like, I get a lot of joy out of that. I get a lot of
Yes.
joy out of that more than they can give me a gift. And so that whole principle plays out in my life, and I'm fully well aware of it. And so, not just from a tax treatment. So, bringing it back to what we were initially talking about, not just from a tax treatment, not just from the monetary perspective, but what to build upon that. This is a really good one, because you can enrich other people's life, and it's not just from a financial perspective. It's also from a blessing perspective as well. And sometimes that blessing can go both ways, because you can be enriched by giving. It's pretty phenomenal.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. So,
Ring, ring.
my bad.
Yeah. It's all good. Uh, so what would be another tip that you have on the back burner? What's another one?
It's also a good time to maybe look into, does it make sense to do a Roth conversion, right? So you kind of at this point in
Ah,
time understand about how much money you made. Does it start to make sense? Should we start moving some from this bucket into a Roth bucket? And there's a lot that goes into that, and we do some calculations like, does it make sense? What's the break even point? Because again, if you do it too late, like, in your life, does it make sense to pay all that taxes right now? And are you really going to get the benefit versus, like, what I mean? Well, maybe I'm making the most money I ever would, so I'd be paying in the highest tax bracket.
Mhm.
One individual, actually, a guy out of my local one, ended up getting hurt. Maybe, well, this year, it was this year, so his income was a little bit, it wasn't as much, put it that way, as when he was working, because he'd been out of work for pretty much this whole year. And then I think that it's probably going to take him like another 6 months, into the new year before he gets back up and working. So we looked at, an opportunity to maybe start moving some of this money, because he's in the lowest tax bracket
Mhm.
right now, and move that over to a Roth. So it's all about like your situation where you're in right now, and it's a lot of conversations need to be had, and like what's your goals, and so we do all that part into the planning. So we are moving, I think a good amount, over right now, and in 2026 we're going to look at, like, is he going to be able to go back to work this year or not? If he is, if it's later in this year, we'll probably move over some more too.
Okay. So is this out of the annuity fund?
Yeah. So what ended up happening, this gentleman's thing. So, and this is why I try to really do deep diving into each individual plan. Whether they're iron workers, carpenters, laborers, brickies, it doesn't matter. Like, right. So when they become a client, one of the first things I do is ask, like, hey, can you give me your plan summary, so I can
Mhm.
deep dive into that. So for us, if you're out of work for 3 months, you are able to roll that money over into an IRA. So they changed that about 2 years ago, I think, where you're able to do that from 3 months, from 6 months to 3 months. So in his situation, he's been out of work for, I'd say closer to a year at this point,
Mhm.
um, where it made a lot of sense for him to be able to move that money over into an IRA where we can customize it. And now we can look at, how much we should start to move over into a Roth.
Interesting. So ours, it's been a while since I've looked at it, but ours was a year.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's routine, man. I know guys that unfortunately, um, they have spent every single, like if
Mm.
they have it down. I tell everybody it's a supplemental retirement account. Look at it like that. You can't touch it. Like, don't mess with it. And I know guys that have just pissed it away. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And it's unfortunate, but there's some people that just don't, for whatever reason, don't make financial prudent decisions. And
Yeah.
that's the goal of this podcast, right? That's the goal of these conversations, is to try to help people and encourage them to think in a manner with which that just goes, okay, well, what kind of financial prudence, like, can I make some financial, savvy decisions? And if I can't, well, then I need to have a conversation with somebody who can help me make financially prudent decisions.
Yeah. And what was important is to make sure, especially if you get hurt, that you're working with a financial advisor that knows your plan summary. Because if you're hurt in that situation and you do need money and you do need to take it out of your SMA or annuity, sometimes they only allow you one time for a hardship or
Yeah,
within a certain period of time. So, like, how do you know when you're going to be healthy?
you don't,
You don't know. You don't know when you can go back
you
to
don't.
work. So now
No,
you're sitting here saying, okay, I got to guess. I got to guess for the next year of my life when I think I'm going to get healthy. Is it going to be
yeah,
3 months from now? A year from now? So how much do I take out? So now that I have to take this out, one deal, am I going to take more than I need?
yeah,
And what's unfortunate is that you take more than you need, well, you're paying that penalty on it and the taxes on it.
yeah.
Where now, when we brought that over to an IRA, now we can take it out as we need it. You don't have to go through the hardship like that you'd have to go through with the our administration.
Right. X
Yeah,
amount of dollars has been pulled out, rolled over into a Roth IRA that now is available for, whatever. Right. So,
yeah. So now we can take it as needed and reduce the penalty, as much as possible. Reduce taxes as much as possible, because you take that out, you're going to all the taxes and that penalty all at once. So if somebody needed 100 grand, they're gonna hit with that. You know what I mean? All up front. Where now, if you bring that over to a traditional IRA, well, now we'll take out, hey, we only need 5 grand this month. Okay, well, now you're going to pay the penalty and taxes on the 5 grand. Next
Right.
month, I only need three. Following month, I need eight. Like, right, we're able to roll with the punches the way that we need to till this gentleman or the member gets back to health.
That's incredibly smart. And I suspect that there's not a lot of people who understand that or know that.
Not that I talk to you, but that's part of about being in a trade. It's like, right. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, and that's why I try to, inform myself as much as possible about the plan summaries, so we can help, the hardworking union member, the best, that we can.
Now, that's actually really, really smart. Let's go ahead and roll it over, pay the taxes on it. We'll roll it over to Roth so we can, let's say, spot treat things as yeah, it's genius, actually. Yeah. Yeah. Pretty smart. Yeah. Let me see your plan summary. That's very smart, man. I like that. Yeah. What else? What else you got off the top of your cuff?
Yeah, I know. I know when I was at Merrill, we had like a FSA. So just kind of, I think that they gave us a little bit in the first year or two. I contributed a little bit, but it was like, if you don't use it, you lose it. So if there's any money in there, and that's, I guess, somewhat similar to HSA, so health savings account, but that flex savings account, you have that money in there, and whether if it's, I don't know if it's glasses, but anything health or whatever you need to use it for, that you have to use it within that year. Otherwise, you do lose that amount of money. So if you put, $1,000 in there, thinking that you might use this because you wanted the tax treatment, the preferred tax treatment on it, well, 2026 comes around and, well, you don't have that anymore. So that's important to pay attention to.
Now, where does the money go if you don't use it all?
That's a great question. I think that I was always curious about that stuff. I was like, man, what are they doing with my money? So I'm not 100% sure. So I don't know if that goes into like the tax fund or not. But you know what? I'm going to look that up and I'll get back to you. But I just know, like, when I was reading this plans, like, I'm going to lose that money. Like, what? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Uh, but yeah, so the next podcast, man, I'll have an answer for you on
Well,
that.
it just makes sense to me because, like, when I think about HSAs, and I know people who've had HSAs, and we actually had and as a matter of fact, one of the former companies I had that I worked for, they actually had FSAs, and again, it was use it or lose it. And I remember them saying that, and they would send out a note like, I don't know, maybe let's say in September, kind of detailing, hey, this is how much money you've got in your FSA. This is how much money, this is the time that you've got to use it or lose it. But I always thought to myself, I'm going to use this. $1,000 is probably what I thought tossed in there. But I remember thinking, well, what happens to that money that I put in there? It's my money.
Yeah,
So what does that mean that I lose it?
yeah.
So I've always
I have
wondered
a
what
guess
that
or two, man,
means.
but I ain't gonna say it yet. I want to make sure I'm right before I say it. That's all.
All right. All right. Very well.
Yeah.
Very well. Very
So,
well. The tax man cometh,
right.
Death and taxes are the only two things certain, right?
That's right. That's
So,
right. So,
so before we move on to the next tip, do you recommend uh, if if FSAs are available, are they a vehicle or a thing that you're in favor of?
I think so if you're going to use them, right? So you got to kind of, and this is going to roll into the next topic, but at the beginning of the year, really planning for that. What are you going to use it for? Because the preferred tax treatment, is good, right? So you do want to take advantage of any kind of vehicle that gives you where you can reduce taxes. So I'm in favor for it. When it comes to that. However, I'm not in favor for, losing that money, right? So you got to make sure that you're smart about it and utilize it correctly.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, we had. I think it was what it really like the purpose that I like when the company come along. They're like, yeah, because they had some management that obviously was not unionized, and they would the FSA comes along, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I can use this to augment or supplement additional insurance costs, right? It could be, let's say it was braces or something, eyeglasses or something to that effect that I wanted, or I knew that we were going to use, or I was going to use because I was younger, or maybe it was for the dentist or whatever it happened to
Yeah.
be. So I knew that it had a purpose and I knew that it had some value, but I just was curious to know your thoughts on an FSA and its advantages. Now, before we go into the next tip, give me the cliff notes of your perspective on HSAs.
I like them, so that's what I use. So that's my go-to. So, that's where I like to put that in, because you don't have to worry about, uh, am I going to use it all this year or not? That
Mm-hmm.
money continues to roll over to the next year. In addition to that, you can invest that money so that money can grow as well, which is, I think a great luxury. And, you get preferred, tax treatment on that as that investment grows, as long as you take it out, for the right reasons, that, it's tax-free money then on that point. So, I'm in favor for it. And also, I think it's 50, but I'm not 100% sure that you can actually start to use that to supplement your retirement. So, on that, so it almost becomes like a Roth at a certain age. So I
50
can't
sounds
remember.
about right.
Is it 50?
Well, it sounds right to me anyway.
Yeah, it's 50 or 59 and a half, but I think it's, where you're able to use it as your, pretty much supplement your retirement. So it
I
becomes
know.
pretty much a Roth at that point in time.
Yeah, I think in line with that, I think I've heard they call it. I think there was some super savers that were talking about it one time, and where I was reading, and they were talking about how it was like, triple tax treatment, like the triple tax, like it goes in tax free, it grows tax free, you can use it tax free, kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. So they were very, very pro. They really liked HSAs.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know that it's. I mean, its use or its creation and availability is nice. I'll tell you this from the little bit that I know, and I've got a podcast scheduled with. There's a lady that runs, and it's basically what the basic idea is: union run healthcare.
Okay.
And I'm excited to have her on because I know in the Chicago area, there's a bunch of trades that have come together to basically essentially provide, union owned healthcare. And I'm excited to see, like, to get into the nuances and all the little discrepancies or the little, details or whatever about that, because I actually think it's kind of genius, to be honest with you, so,
Yeah.
but look for that podcast episode later.
That age is actually age 65, and
65. Okay.
and you're able to pull it out, and it's going to be penalty free. So you still pay the taxes on it, but yeah, it's more of like a traditional IRA, I should say, than a Roth. But it gets to grow, tax deferred, and
Okay.
then at age 65 you can pull that out, and you don't pay any penalties on that.
Okay. Excellent. HSAs are the way to go. And for the next tip, we're going to where?
Yep. So kind of going into the end of the year, you want to just reflect on, the year that you're in, and, say, hey, like, what did I do right? What can I improve on? And really just start to create that budget and that plan for 2026. Right. So again, like, we just talked about the FSA, it's just something like, what I mean? And you create that plan. Like, it's just something, I anticipate on needing, you
Mm-hmm.
know, should I bump up my contribution to my 401k or my IRA? Should I put an extra $100 in a month, or what can I afford type deal?
Yeah.
And I know for tradespeople that sometimes that could be difficult because we don't know what work's going to look like, right? So, when I plan with a lot of my blue collar workers, it's like, hey, everything's always on the conservative end, like, right? So, and then that's part of that strategy that we do is, should you start to throw that money in if you're just starting off, and don't have a large emergency fund, instead of throwing it into an IRA early on? Well, why don't we just start like a regular investment account, so you have more freedom and flexibility with that money? If you need it, we
Mm-hmm.
can pull it. Of course, have your emergency fund, but that's an additional emergency fund. And then when we look at the end of the year, we can take that money and contribute it to that IRA or whatever other investment that might make sense at that time.
How much do you recommend someone have in their emergency fund?
Rule of thumb is 3 to 6 months of expenses
Okay.
is usually what it is. So again, especially with you know, when work's boom and bust for those clients that I work with, I try to err closer to the 6 month side on things.
Yeah. Okay. And so you don't separate, because I know that some people do, but you don't separate like a real like $1,000 emergency fund, $500 emergency fund. You can get cash on hand, as opposed to like, let's say, 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses. They're all lumped into one for you, correct?
Yeah, I think so. And the reason is that I mean, it's hard to just earmark, hey, I'm going to need an extra $300 for something. I don't know what's going to happen. Like, right. Versus that, oh, my air conditioner went out or my transmission went out. Like, right. So we want to make sure that we have money that, hey, like, it sucks that this happened, but my transmission is going to get fixed this week and I can
Mm,
still go to work. Right. So
yeah.
that's important. Or, if it's, 100 degrees out, you can keep your air conditioning on, or, if your furnace
Yeah.
goes out right now, that, what I mean, you can, you can get it fixed. Right. So, and, it'll work, dries up, like the worst thing you want to do is, be worrying desperately.
Mm, yeah.
Am I going to work tomorrow? Am I going to get, I mean, I remember, back when work was real slow, like, '08, '09, going to the hall, and like, I mean, the place would be packed. Guys playing cards, just like hoping, praying, pick me, pick me, pick me, pick me,
Yeah.
right? And like hoping that they're going to get a job. And the thing is like pretty much if you were in the hall, you probably weren't going to get a job anyways. They already had a guy they're calling, right? They already have their guy that they're sending out. It works that tight, so it's like, hey man, like whatever,
Yeah.
but just showing up and but you don't want to have that stress on yourself or your family, right? So
Yeah.
when you have that cushion, like it's just like everything else. There's going to be ups and downs, but when you have
Yeah.
that cushion, you take that out a little bit. It's not quite as painful, and you're not stressed, and then you're not taking it out on everybody else because you want to go to work, and I don't even know how I'm going to pay my mortgage now, and then, like, I mean, and then you're high strung, like, right, and then
Yeah.
it doesn't just
Yeah.
affect you financially; it affects all parts of your life, right? Personal, I mean, your
Yeah.
kids can, even if you're great to them, like they can tell if parents are stressed, just whatever. You just have that bad energy, like, right. So by having that good cushion, that you can prevent a lot of that.
Yeah. By having an emergency fund, by having
Absolutely.
savings. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I think the number one fight for couples is money. So
Yeah.
yeah. So this idea then that if we can sit here and decide, the other aspect of it is that I'm going to try to compartmentalize my life. I'm not going to bring work home, or I'm not going to let financial stuff get to me. That's a bunch of horse crap. It's you're all this one person, and all of that stuff is going to, positively or negatively affect you.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. And I think that you can, like, again, it gets back to, here we're going into 2026, what should our budget be? Should I buy that new truck? Should I buy that boat? How about the motorcycle? Do I need that? Merry
there it
Christmas to
is.
me, but you're going to be strapped for the rest of 2026. Is it worth it? Like, right. So creating that budget, I think is extremely important.
Yeah, I'd like to offer another tip too. And this one, I mean, obviously you're the financial professional, but for those of you who may be listening, if you have a large expense that is coming to an end in 2026, because end of the year, right? Give serious consideration, number one, to the budget, like Ty is talking about. But number two, if you've gone X amount of years without having access to that money, now this could be a truck payment, could be a car payment, quite frankly, it could be a mortgage payment, but and it's very likely for those of us in the trade, sad to say, could be child support. If this is coming available to you next year, for the love of all that's holy, give serious consideration to what you can do other than just go out and blanketly spend it and leverage yourself for another 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Look at turning that into, number one, possibly some more emergency fund money. Number two, the possibility of contributing to a IRA, right? Or some form of funding, taxable account, something that you can build up and not be leveraged on. You don't want to be like Biggie Smalls said, "More money, more problems." Right. So I'm making more money, but I'm succumbing to lifestyle inflation, which is exactly what happens to a ton of guys. Is that I'm making more money, I'm spending more money. I'm making more money, I'm spending more money, instead of saving and just living at a specific certain threshold. So
Yeah.
that's my specific tip, and the reason that I can sit here and confidently say that is because back in, I don't know, 2018, 2019, somewhere in that time frame, very similar set of circumstances. We're going to have about $600 a month come available, and I didn't want to just blanketly have it spent or something else. That's how I already understood the Roth IRA perspective, and that's when we went and opened one up. Went and saw a fiduciary financial professional. Hey, what do you think? Talk to them a little bit. Had to educate them on, for the most part, on the annuity fund, because they think it's an insurance product, and it's really
all day long.
it's so frustrating, man. Which, by the way, for those of you listening, I'm looking forward. Ty and I will definitely explore what that actually is, and why, what financial professionals, other than my man Ty here, why they think it is some insurance product rather than like a union 401k. But otherwise, he gave me some good advice when it come to, okay, let's go ahead and open up a Roth IRA and you can begin contributing. We don't contribute nowhere near as much as we should, but we have it open and we have the ability to contribute to it long term. So that's my tip. If 2026 comes available, you're ending with a truck payment. You're not going to pay on that anymore. Child support's going to come available, whatever it happens to be. Alimony's going to be done, whatever. You've been going without that
freedom
money
for a reason, man. So you know what I mean? That the freedom of not worrying about, hey, how am I going to make my next dollar, or the burden of, hey, I got to pay this, or like whatever, So that freedom is an amazing feeling, So make that decision. Do you need that, super new, truck or whatever else, or boat, or But
don't rush out to get yourself shackled in automatically again.
Exactly. Yep.
Right. Just give it some serious consideration. And, if you don't have a budget, I would seriously consider thinking about, and there's nothing scary about a budget. They're super easy to make, to be blunt with you. You just need, it's all it is tracking money coming in, money going out. That's all it is. Where's my money going, instead of it, you're really, what you want to do is tell your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. And there's a lot of people who wonder where it went instead of telling their money where to go. Where to go? I don't know where my money went.
I like that.
That's all it is. And it's like, we get this, we were doing business classes, talking to regular old ironworkers, they were interested in starting their business. And we would have conversations about the financial piece, about everything really. And when it comes to budgeting, it's very difficult for you to budget from a company perspective and structure if you're not budgeting in a family perspective. And it was like, okay, look, there's nothing nefarious. It's nothing like confusing. It's just a matter of, okay, how much money do you make? You can go by per week. That's fine. How much do you make per week? Okay, well, here's how much you can go, for 4 weeks. What are your bills? What are they? Write them all down. All right. If you have less bills going out than you have money coming in, congratulations. You have extra money. You have discretionary or free spending. If you have more bills going out than you have coming in, you have an issue that you need to discuss and deal with. It's likely to be going out to eat. It could very well be that you have succumbed to lifestyle inflation and maybe you got to cut some subscriptions back, whatever it happens to be. But you don't know until you paint that picture. And that's all it really is. So again, come 2026, if you got some money coming available that's free, that don't willingly sacrifice all that freedom that you now have to, again, shackle yourself for something that you, in a year's time, you may not even like it anyway.
Yep.
You may not be even enjoying it because you have to go to work and you're, for the love of all that's holy, don't get wrapped up into where I need my overtime to pay my bills. It's definitely not where you want to live. Yep. So, okay. Do you have any more tips before, we fade off into the sunset heading into Christmas?
Yeah, man, I think that's a great start, just to look at for some people, and going into 2026, and wrapping up 2025. So, again, like if people need help with, budgeting and stuff like that, I even have like a form that we give out, like, prior to our, first discovery meeting, just so people kind of start to think about it, because you'd be
Right.
surprised that, some people have no idea, and a lot of times when we do our financial planning, we'll be like, well, what are your monthly expenses? They tell you a number. Well, what are you making? Then you go out throughout the year and it's like, oh, you said you're saving, you know 4 grand a month. Where's that money at now? So they always underestimate what they're actually spending. So they're always
Yeah.
spending more. So, what I mean? Maybe that's your bills, but what are you doing? Are you going out to eat? Are you using it for
Right.
this? Or you gotta make sure, that we're actually calculating how much you're saving. And that's why I really liked what you said. Tell your money where to go, not asking
Yeah.
where it went, right? So if you're saying, oh, well, I'm thinking that there's, you know, a $4,000 surplus, well, where is that money going?
Right.
I should
Right.
have, 48 G's at the end of the year that I should be investing or doing something with it.
Yeah.
But I'm left with $5,000. Like, what happened? There's a disconnect. So be realistic with
Yeah.
that. And I think that's a good check. Do that first month or whatever you think that the budget is. And at the end of the month, well, do you have that much extra? Because if you don't, there's some expenses that you really didn't include in that budget that you need
That's
to go
right.
back and take a look at. So
That's right.
it's realistic.
Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%. I wish that more tradesmen would seriously contemplate budgeting. And here's the thing, right? A lot of guys, I still teach an apprenticeship program and it blows my mind. I was having a conversation and there's two apprentices, at least two. One of them drinks 4 Red Bulls a day. The other one was drinking 4 Monsters a day. And I was like, first off, that blew my mind just from the sugar intake you're getting.
Oh
But
yeah.
then I'm like, well, how much money does this cost you? Because if you go to a gas station, next thing you know, you spent $15. Well, how many days of the week is that? Times 15. How much money are you seriously spending? And I'm not saying that you go without your we all have little things that we like.
Sure.
I mean, you and I are sitting here talking on nice microphones with good headphones, like we spent some money to do podcasting. But, you know, the reality is that we don't stop and take a checkup. And that's really what we're talking about. That's the budgeting. It's a snapshot, right? It's a picture into your financial health at a specific time. And what better way to do it? What better time to do it than to sit down and like just look at what do our bills look like at the beginning of the year, and then what does everything look like towards the end of that month, and how much money do I got coming in, and sit there and go, okay, well, this is what I've got going on.
Yep.
So, all right, man. Well, look, it looks like it's a pretty good spot to stop to kind of put an end on this. For those of you who are listening, I appreciate you stopping by. I hope you have a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And Ty, any final words before we jump off here?
No, just wishing everybody safe and happy holidays, man. So I appreciate it again for having me on.
Yeah, we will have you on soon. And for those of you who are interested in more of our financial discussions, we'll let you know what the next topic is. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.